Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. I had a video I was going to do today and something came up that changed my mind, and it's with a heavy heart that I tell you what I heard earlier, that Buddy Hall has passed away. 9-ball Buddy Hall, the best player of them all. And Buddy and I have a history, and I owe him, you know, and I've tried to help him out a few times, and just appreciated his friendship, because he was just always, you know, kind and respectful to me. And when I met him, I was just 16 years old. I met him in Clinton, Iowa, and that's where a lot of the top players were that I'd seen in magazines, but I hadn't seen in person. Omaha John was there, and Keith McCready had a shirt on that said, "The world's got the last two." Strickland was there. Kim Davenport was there in a red suit and tie, and that's what I really liked about those guys, Sigel and Hopkins, and they always wore suits and suit and tie a lot, especially the night before the tournament. And everybody went there and was dressed real nice, and it just was a classy atmosphere. And I felt like I was in a movie when I was 16 around all those guys. And Omaha John and I ended up being road partners, so I was watching him closer than everybody else, because I'd already met him in Omaha, and he got to the semifinals of the tournament. This was a bar table tournament with the big cue ball. And John played Dallas West in the semifinals, and Dallas West ran 10 racks in a row on him. So now Buddy Hall was waiting for that match to play the finals, and Buddy did something that I thought was really smart, and I don't know if I would have figured out to do this or not, but he made them switch tables. He wouldn't play on the same table that Dallas West had just ran the 10 racks in a row. You know, for obvious reasons, but a lot of times in that situation, you know, you won't think quick enough to do something like that. And sometimes in this day and age, you don't have a choice. You know, they'll have like one table. That's another thing, you know, I have trouble with these tournaments these days, is a lot of times they'll have one, what they call TV table, which is a streaming video table, but it'll have a different cue ball and different cloth, and like the pocket size will be different. One of the last tournaments I played in, I wasn't playing very good anyway, so I just wanted to play my first match over in the corner somewhere. And of course they put me on the streaming video table. That's like 3 times in a row that I've went to a, you know, more of a pro tournament, trying to get the cobwebs off and have to play on the streaming table the first match. And it's just you get self-conscious. I do, you know, and if I haven't been playing. So Buddy made him switch tables, and Buddy ended up winning that match. So he beat Dallas West in the finals, and that's where Omaha John gave who was it, Tony Coleman from Michigan. He gave him the 6-ball on the bar table, and I think Tony ended up beating him, but he was a really good player, and for John to give him the wild 6 was pretty impressive. So that was a great experience for me, getting to see Buddy Hall live and get to see him beat somebody that just ran 10 racks in a row. And for the most part, Buddy would play those tournaments from start to finish and rarely ever make a mistake. I watched him a lot of matches where he never missed a ball, and his position play was as good as any in the world. So after that experience, the next time that I ran into Buddy, I was 19 down in Dallas, Texas. There was 2 pretty big tournaments back to back, 2 weekends in a row. One was in Fort Worth. I think that was at a Clicks. and I think the other one was in Dallas. They were both in that Metroplex area. And they were both on 4x8 pool tables playing 9-ball. Well, the first finals that I played Buddy Hall, I went through, when I was 19, I was one of the best players in the country, but I was undercover, and not a whole lot of people, they knew my name a lot, but didn't know my face, so I was able to sneak around for a number of years, and I document a lot of that seasoning that I got in my book that just came out. So if you get a chance, I got all the hardback covers in. So if somebody wants a signed edition of this, on my website I have a place at cjwiley.com to order this, and I'll sign it to you. I'll personally sign the cover. So that will be, for people that want a collector's item, and I'm getting really good reviews. But Buddy Hall was instrumental in that we lagged for the break in that finals. He won the lag. He wanted to lag. He wouldn't flip a coin. He wanted it to be all skill. So he won the lag. He almost froze it on the rail. And then broke and ran 5 racks in a row. So I didn't shoot till the 6th game. And I think we were racing to 11. And I think I probably got 3 or 4 innings in that whole race. So he ran the first 5 racks in a row and then played perfect. And I think beat me like 11-3 or 11-4. So then the next weekend, it was the same situation. I fought my way through the tournament and got to the finals, and here it is, Buddy Hall again. And we lagged for the break. He almost froze it on the rail again. He won the first break and proceeded to run 6 racks in a row. Before I got a shot, it was 6-0. And then played perfect and again beat me, I think, 11-5. I mean, I still played good just to get to 5. So it was amazing watching Buddy play, because anybody that's actually seen him getting dead stroke will verify his cue ball control was as good, I think, as it can possibly get. Now, the players today are playing that speed, but I think some of them will admit anyway that they're standing on the shoulders of the players in the generations before them. I mean, Buddy Hall was one of those shoulders that I stood on. I mean, I'm going to tell you some of the things that he taught me. And so, growing up with YouTube videos and being able to see the champion players at a young age is a huge advantage. If I would have had that opportunity, my game definitely would have been better at even a younger age. So it does help to have the modern technology, especially the videos. All we had was Wide World of Sports. I used to watch Minnesota Fats and Willie Mosconi and U.J. Puckett and Alan Hopkins and Sigel. But you didn't really get to see much like you do in a full AccuStats video. The best video I think that I've made is with Steve Miserak, which was at my second professional tournament. And Pat Fleming told me that year it was the best-selling video of the year, where it goes downhill and I beat Miserak 11-10 and ran the last rack out in like a minute, and it was fairly difficult. So Buddy beat me both of those finals. The next time I was able to hang around Buddy very much was in Tampa, Florida. And I lived there for about a year and a half, and Buddy was living there too. And we used to practice at Baker's Billiards, which was downtown Tampa. Old, traditional type pool room that had all the old gamblers in there, Jimmy Reid and a lot of those guys. Road players coming through quite a bit. Steve Cook played there, who was one of the best one-pocket players in the country, even though he was always kind of underrated. Alan Hopkins went down there and played him at Tampa one time, and Steve Cook beat Alan Hopkins for the money, gambling, which surprised me back then, but that's just how good he played. And Buddy Hall played one pocket every bit as good as Efren. Now, Efren had different skill sets. You know, his billiard knowledge and the things he could do was pretty amazing. So he helped raise the bar of one pocket. But as far as playing just perfect textbook one pocket, Buddy Hall was as good as they got. I saw him play Efren in a tournament, and he beat Efren. And he never gave Efren a shot. You know, if you never give him a shot, there's not a whole lot they can do. And then I think people have probably heard that Buddy beat Efren for the money down in Houston, a big gambling set playing 10-ball. And then, according to my sources, Buddy beat him about 20 times in a row, like in tournaments and gambling matches. And when Efren first came over to the United States and played Buddy down there at Reid's in Houston, Texas, he was more like Bustamante. His stroke was more, it wasn't straight. He had kind of a loop in his stroke. And I know Buddy and Mike Sigel beat him several times, and Earl Strickland. And Efren must have went back to the Philippines and worked that out, because when he came back, one year in particular that I remember, people were talking about how his stroke was a lot straighter. And I thought, you know, not sure, it's my theory, but I think Buddy Hall and Mike Sigel and Earl Strickland put so much pressure on Efren that he was having some misfires, and he traced it to his stroke and improved it. And that's accolades to Efren. I'm sure he's done that a few times in his life, like we all have. I've continued to refine my game, and I've just never been satisfied with how I'm playing, even when I was playing, you know, at one of the top speeds in the world. I was still trying to get better, because if you're not trying to get better, you're probably going to get worse, because nobody can just maintain that level. The universe abhors a vacuum, it says, and what that means is if you're not going up, you're going down. And so I think Shane Van Boening will probably testify that he's still trying to get better. I mean, Shane's pretty much mastered the game. Filler and Shane and Feder and Sky Woodward and Justin Bergman. I just watched Justin Bergman play a big one-pocket match in Louisville, and I was really impressed, you know, with his cue ball control. He's about as good as you can get as far as the cue ball control. To see him and Buddy Hall play a one-pocket match, you might have to be there for a while. I'd say if they played a race to 5, it would take at least 5 or 6 hours, because they're not going to give up any shots, and their cue ball control is so good that you know, the game is going to be definitely prolonged. They're going to end up with the balls down table, and it's going to be a lengthy match. You know, they're not going to give very many early shots where they can like run 8 and out. That's probably not going to happen very often. So Buddy and I practiced at Baker's, and I remember one day we were practicing, and I just got a new tip on my cue. So the only 2 things I'd ever heard was you get them shaped like a dime or you get them shaped like a nickel. So I asked Buddy, I said, Buddy, should I shape this like a dime or a nickel? And he looked at me and laughed, and he said, CJ, it don't matter. You play the game with the edge of your tip, not the center. And he showed me what he meant by that, and I still pass this information on to this very day, where when you hit so what he's saying is that the cue isn't level, it's got a little bit of an angle down. So it's like if it was your knuckles, instead of hitting something flat with your fist, what martial artists do is they hit it with these 2 knuckles. So there's a little bit of an angle going down. It's the same principle with hitting a cue ball. Instead of trying to have your cue level, if you notice, just about every champion player you see, most of their shots are going to have an angle going down. Well, when you put the angle going down, again, it's like your fist, you're hitting it with your knuckles. And in this case, the knuckles are the edge of the tip. Because think about it, the edge of the tip, it's harder, it's sharper, so it imparts spin easier and quicker, just like a masse shot. That's a extreme example, but when you hit a masse shot, you're pinching it with the edge of your tip, and there can't be much of a follow through at all. So what Buddy was doing was he was angling that cue where he was using the edge of his tip, so that he was hitting everything basically with his knuckles, and you could hear the difference. That's one thing that when you're around champion players, you can hear the difference because it's a higher pitched sound. Like Efren, I've played him a few times where he's playing so good and hitting the ball so pure, it almost sounds like his cue is broken, because it's such a higher pitched sound. But what that is he's hitting the ball just perfectly with that pop stroke, which is more of a tempo thing, to be able to maximize the reaction of the cue ball. That's how come the champion players can move the ball around so easily and draw the ball and put spin on the ball, and they can probably do it in a way that seems like it's really easy, but when you try to do it yourself, you find out pretty quickly it's not that easy. But one of the main reasons I think people have trouble is they try to use a level cue, and they try to make their bridge hand go up and down instead of the backhand pulling that cue up slightly, and that's called chambering. Like if you get into your position and just pull the right hand, if you're right-handed, up a little bit, you'll feel the tension go into your shoulder. Because one thing about that shoulder is it stores and releases the energy for you to hit the ball, because your hand and arm is attached to your shoulder, so your shoulder can't drop. Like people talk about the elbow dropping. That's okay. A lot of people have a natural elbow drop. That's not going to matter. But the shoulder dropping, that's a whole different story. You can't allow that shoulder to drop. So that chambering, when I say, I've got a video on that showing how to do it, but when you pull that cue up slightly, and I'm just talking about slightly, where it just creates a little bit of an angle, then you're using the top edge of your tip that contacts the cue ball, and then if you're using high English or trying to follow the ball, you want the angle going up so you can use the bottom edge of your tip. So, and it's amazing how much easier it is to follow and draw the ball when the angle of your cue is correct. This is the same with aiming too. The angle of the cue is what I pay attention to more than anything, but that's something I'll have to show. Can't just explain that one, but every shot that you shoot has an angle, and if you learn how to preset that angle and aim like you normally do, those two things combined, pretty much, it makes it very difficult to not make the shots when you have a check and a balance. Everything that I do, and I get this from business really, is you have to have a check and a balance. It's like a profit and loss statement in business. You always want to look at your strengths and weaknesses, and you want to always strengthen your weaknesses. They say the chain breaks at the weakest link. So when I had any type of weakness, I would just practice that. Like if I was having trouble shooting balls off the rail, then I would just shoot balls off the rail for like 15 or 20 minutes. Just take ball in hand and freeze it to the rail every single time, and practice running like playing the ghost, except you start out with the ball on the rail every time. If you're having trouble getting on the rail, playing position, then I'll practice for 15 or 20 minutes and try to freeze every single shot on the rail. Because here's the thing, if you don't know how not to do it, then you're going to accidentally do it. And that happens so much. I don't know how many times I've seen players have a chance to beat a champion player, and they'll end up freezing themselves on the rail on the 8 ball or 7 ball and can't get on the 9, or it'll force them to miss the shot. And it's just from not having the touch. And a lot of times, Buddy Hall used to tell me, 1 rail is better than none, 2 rails is better than 1, and 3 rails is better than 2. So what he's saying, when he's playing position, the more rails you can go, the better off you are. Now that's on a 9-foot table. On a bar table, that's not the case. On bar tables, you play shape a little bit differently. And because the emphasis is on cue ball control, but it's harder to go 2 rails and 3 rails like you do on a bigger table. So a 9-foot table is what I'm talking about as far as going extra rails. So after practicing with Buddy in Tampa, I went on the road with several top players that I've told stories about, but that knowledge of playing with the edge of my tip really sunk in, and that was a big advantage. I was already doing that to some extent. It's always better to understand what you're doing at a deeper level, and then you can improve it. So that's what I did. Now, I ran into Buddy several times at pro tournaments, and he was just my nemesis. I just couldn't beat him, and it was a mental thing too, because he beat me so bad those 2 tournaments in a row that it was really hard for me to get psyched up to beat him, because I'm thinking, man, he's going to run like 5 or 6 racks in a row on me. But obviously you can't do that every time, and that was on a 4x8 table. 9-foot table is a little tougher to run that many racks on, at least that consistently. So the first time that I ever did beat Buddy Hall was at Lexington, Kentucky, at what was it called? The Continental Inn. Danny Biley ran this tournament. And I remember I was playing really well, and just so you know, Buddy was on the downslide, so he was not playing his best. Because even in this match, if he would have played like he did on me before, he probably still would have beat me, or I might have beat him hill, because it's hard to beat somebody that plays perfect. However, I did manage to win that match. I won it like 11-7, and I just freewheeled on him. And that's what I would do, is I'd put myself into a frame of mind where I had nothing to lose, and then just get up and play these guys almost like I was practicing. And that was intimidating, especially with the firepower that I had and the shot-making ability a lot of times. But that's the only way that I could beat those guys like Buddy Hall and Efren Reyes and Nick Varner and Earl, and because they're going to play so well that you've got to do something to get in their head, or at least put a little bit of intimidation on them, because if you don't, then they're probably going to play the game about as perfectly as humanly possible, and it's hard to win like that. So anyway, years later, as a matter of fact, it was 5 years ago now, I was at Danny Biley's house, and I told him about playing Buddy, and he said something that was funny. He said, yeah, he says, I remember when you played Buddy at my tournament there in Lexington. He said, we had you a 2-game favorite. We had it that Buddy didn't 9, and you covered the spread. And I was like, man, I was like, if you would have told me that before the match, I probably wouldn't have won, because that would have sharked me. Because like I said, I was just trying to beat this man one time. I don't think I'd ever beat him before, except practicing. I get to beat him on him practicing a lot of times, and he'd quit for a little while and then want to play again, when I got in that dead stroke. But that's the first time that I can remember beating him. And I guess the bookmakers had me a 2-game favorite, which shocks me even to this day. However, like I said, Buddy wasn't 100% at that time. This was like 1993, probably. Maybe 1994. I can't remember for sure. But Buddy Hall was a different animal. I mean, he's played so many champion players and giving them, like he used to give Louis Roberts a 7-ball. Louis would go down to Shreveport, Louisiana, and take the 7-ball from Buddy when he lived in Shreveport. Bill Schick, I think, was who Buddy was staying with. I think it was his pool room, maybe. But Buddy beat Louis, giving him the 7 like 3 times that I've heard of. So that's how good he played. And just a master technician. There's some other advice Buddy gave me that made an impact on my life. You know, in his later years, Buddy got really heavy. And, you know, he was a partier at one time. I think he quit drinking there later in his life. But he told me one day, he said, CJ, he said, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And I looked at him, and I saw how out of shape he was, and man, that went deep into my subconscious. And I have to say, I took that to heart. I was like, I don't know how long. I never really planned on living that long either. However, I made a commitment. I was like, however long I live, I'm going to do it in good shape. So I've spent a lot of time and energy and to keep myself in good shape. And I have to give Buddy some of the credit there for what he told me that day, because it sticks in my mind. I remember that as clearly as if he did it yesterday. And it's funny how life is. The things that you remember the clearest generally had the biggest influence on your life. And I can speak for myself there. And what's also interesting is a lot of the best memories I have are some of the worst times of my life. However, I learned the most during those negative times. You know, I've talked about getting knifed twice and stuck up at gunpoint 3 times, and I've been in over 20 bar fights, mostly breaking them up, but I've probably been in 30 of them. I've seen all kinds of violent situations, you know, living on the road and going, you know, town to town, hustling pool. And a lot of it I wasn't involved with, or my partner, but it just happened at the bar we was in. And I was in Albuquerque one time, and a guy broke a beer bottle and cut this guy's throat with the beer bottle. And my girlfriend at the time was singing in a band, and I know she went in the bathroom and helped bandage him up, clean him up, and she said there's blood all over the place. I don't know if you ever seen anybody get their throat cut, but it's not something that is appealing at all. And I saw them taking the guy out on a stretcher, and they had him wrapped up like the mummy. And so, I mean, I've seen a lot of that kind of stuff. People get hit with pool balls and pool sticks, and you know, lots of fights. And that's just the nature of the bar business. I think that has more to do with alcohol than it has to do with anything that involves the game of pool itself. So anyway, Buddy Hall made a big impact on my life, and I just wanted to do this tribute off the top of my head. I might do another one, give it some thought, because there's a lot of other things that Buddy and I talked about that I processed, and then, you know, I tried to model him at one time and hold the cue like he did, and you know, that's something that I would not recommend to anybody. What I teach in pool is how to get into a position where when your body goes down on the shot, there won't be anybody that does it quite exactly like you do. But there is a way to get into that position for everybody. It's just that when I point it out, once you see it and can do it, then you can recognize it in all these champion players. All of them are a little bit different, and I do think all of them, except for maybe 1 or 2, can improve their footwork. But for the most part, the greatest players today are the ones that I would watch. If you want to learn how to improve your game, you have to start at the foundation. Just like building any other structure. It's not the upper floors that that have to be perfect. It has to be the foundation, because if there's a flaw in the foundation, then it's going to cause flaws in their upper floors. And it's the same thing with pool. If your footwork is off, that means it's going to affect the rest of your body. And the major thing about that is it affects the center of your vision. So you won't be shooting out of the center, like you're shooting a pistol out of the center, or throwing a dart out of the center, shooting a basketball out of the center. And Buddy Hall was definitely centered, because when you get centered and connected, the amount of feel and touch that you experience playing the game goes up like fivefold, like 500%. Because if I'm not connected and get down on a shot, then I feel like I'm just trying to hit one ball into the other ball, and there's no connection to it. But when I do it the way that I always have, or how I learn to, I'm connecting the balls fully every single time. So when I get down, most of my shots, I feel like I'm shooting them straight in. Most of my cut shots, I just feel like I'm aiming at the edge. So that is all done when you're standing above the ball. If you want to learn more about my techniques, fundamentals, and systems, join me at cjwiley.com. And if you want to hear the stories on the road when I was a teenager and how I developed into a top player before I was 21, then you can order my book on Amazon or on that website if you want one that's signed. So the only place you can get the signed ones, and I will sign them to you personally, I'll sign them to whoever the name is on the credit card, unless you can get me information that you want it differently. But I'm only going to sign the ones that's on my website. So hope you're doing well. And Buddy Hall, that's a big chapter in my life. And all I can say is rest in peace, warrior. You were the best of them all.